Welcome to Q&A, Social Security Disability Today. This program is brought to you by the Reeves Law Firm, representing you and your Social Security and disability needs. If you have a problem or questions regarding Social Security and disability, call attorney Anthony Reeves. Is your host, attorney Anthony Reeves.
It is an honor to have you back again, and welcome to another edition of Q&A Social Security Disability Today. Rare conditions and applying for disability. I get this approach to me on a regular basis. A person will call me or contact me or send me an email or instant message basically saying, I've got this condition. I can't find any attorney that can represent me because of this particular condition. It's really unique, and I believe that I need an attorney who has a pretty good knowledge of this condition, because if they don't, they're not going to be able to effectively represent me on my case. I'll give you a great example. Several years ago when I first started practicing, I had a young lady who I was representing, who had Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. It's a congenital birth defect that basically causes one of her limbs to grow larger than the other ones. It required it to be amputated at several points and debridements at other points. In other words, basically over time, her leg had to be amputated above the ankle, above the knee, and then they had to slowly but surely kind of shave it down more and more to prevent her from having a lot of pain. Now, that's a very unique condition. But what I found was, going forward, at the end of the day, it's really not about the condition itself. So I'm really talking, excuse me one second here, I'm really talking to a lot of my people out here who have these conditions, who feel like you're beating your head up against a wall because you feel like you need to find an attorney that knows this condition. Let me throw out a few things to you for those persons who have rare conditions. First, the condition itself doesn't guarantee you disability benefits. So stop fixating on trying to find an attorney who understands the condition itself. Is it helpful that they're knowledgeable of it? Sure. But if you're talking to someone who does disability benefits, who reviews medical records on a regular basis, and who's familiar with most medical conditions, as long as their computer works, or they can go to a Merck manual or a library, they can research the particular medical condition itself. If they don't know it right off the gate, don't sit there and lose your mind and get upset and feel like you need to go find another attorney. Because the simple fact of the matter is, there are doctors that don't know all the conditions because they don't see them on a regular basis. A few of my doc friends, when I told them about Klippel-Trenaunay, they hadn't heard of that condition. Well, this wasn't in their area of expertise. They were internal medicine and general practice. This was basically a congenital birth defect, so it was highly specialized. But here's where you need to understand. It's not about the condition itself. It's not about that. Now, for those of you who are pausing and thinking, well, I've gone online and I've looked and it says here, if I meet these criteria under the listings of medical condition, I can be found disabled. So I need an attorney that understands all those aspects. I'm like, yeah, but most people don't get found to have met the listings because they're so hard. The next two steps is really what you need to know about. How are you impacted by that condition? Let me stress this again. How are you impacted by that condition? The fact that you have a rare condition means nothing if it doesn't tell the court how it limits your ability to work. Plain and simple. You need to focus more on how does your condition limits you. That's really what they want to know about. All the rest of that, I've got this condition that you're wearing with a badge of honor because it's such a rare condition and that this should be enough to show I'm disabled. That's not the point. Now, here's the other problem that you run across with persons with rare conditions. Sometimes the treatment options are very limited. I'll just call it like it is. It's the truth. The treatment options may be very limited depending on the condition itself. Here's what I tell clients when I get them to come to me like that. I tell them any treatment is better than no treatment. What do you mean by that? Most conditions you have usually require you to be followed by some particular type of doctor. Even if it's a particular type of doctor you only see once a year because there's no cure for the condition or there's not a lot of progressive treatment for the condition. Medical advancements and medical discoveries are made all the time. So you have a burden of bearing to prove that you're disabled. So what should you do? You keep going, because you never know. That one time you go to your doctor for your annual checkup for your condition that you know won't change, won't get any better, all of a sudden there's a new procedure that's out. Guess what? You now know you can avail yourself of it. But if you don't do that, then you going in before a judge and saying, well, this condition is not going to improve, it's not going to change, and my doctor, going to a doctor serves no purpose. First thing out the judge's mouth is, are you a doctor? Well, are you a doctor? Don't focus on what you read and researched on Google or maybe what doctors told you. You have an ongoing responsibility. Continue the treatment. Also, here's the kicker. Don't talk about your condition in the third person. Now you would say, I don't understand. What does that mean? For instance, don't say, well, you know, well, persons with XYZ condition like mine tend to have these problems. And the judge is going to look in your medical records and say, I don't see where you've reported any of those problems. Well, persons with those, the judge could care about persons. They want to know about you. So don't talk about your condition in the third person. Talk about it in your scenario. If persons like that have these problems, can you point to the judge in your medical records where you have, one, told your doctor about those problems, and two, has the doctor addressed those problems? I cannot tell you the number of times I've run across people who have really held on tight to the fact that their condition is so rare, the treatment options are so limited, and that the medical research on this condition shows all these different things, but they cannot specifically point the court to where they fall under one of those scenarios. It's not a matter, you don't assume that at the gate. That's like assuming that everybody who has high blood pressure is going to have problems with lightheaded dizziness, or everybody who has diabetes is going to have problems with neuropathy and retinopathy with the vision. In other words, you're making this blanket statement that just because you have this condition, that you have those problems. Now, there are those unique conditions that by their nature are progressively bad. And this is where it becomes tricky. Because, like, for instance, Lou Gehrig's syndrome. Everybody knows that it's a progressive, debilitating disorder. But we also know that some people, it impacts differently. Like, I think they did a story recently with this gentleman he's author of all these great books. They told him he was only going to live, they told him he was only going to live like maybe a year. And he ended up living like a year afterwards. He ended up living 30 years later. And that's why I tell people, the focus is on you. When you're presenting your condition to the Social Security Administration, you need to present to them what it is, what problems you have from it, what have you done to correct those problems, and you are ongoingly doing that, and what specific limitations you have from the condition. Do not try to sit there and bombard a court. I cannot tell you this. I'm going to say this, and don't take this the wrong way. I try to be a straight shooter because you know that's how I roll. Do not feel that when you go before a judge, and this is the last point I'm going to make, when you go before a judge, it is not your responsibility to educate the judge about your condition. Meaning this, when you get there, do not sit up here and say, well, you know, Your Honor, people with these conditions typically. What condition do you have? Is it diagnosed? What limitations do you have? Is it in your medical records? What problems do you have? Is it in your file? If it's not in your file, giving the judge a medical lesson, and you're not a doctor, let me throw that out there. A medical lesson does nothing but make the judge mad. Focus on proving you're disabled and focus on getting the medical evidence. Some of you are going to be telling me right now, I know I'm going to get some jamming responses where you're like, Attorney Reeves, you don't even understand what I'm going through because I got a unique condition. There's not a whole lot that can be done. The doctors are telling me there's nothing more that can be done. And whenever they tell me that, I'll always say, did the doctors put in your medical records there's nothing more to be done? Well, I know that's what they told me. Did the doctors put in your medical condition? Well, they said, listen to the words coming out my mouth. Did the doctors put in your medical records there's nothing more to be done? Well, I don't know. Why don't you look first? Okay, look first and ask. When they tell you there's nothing more I can do for you, are you going to put that in my medical records? Because when you go before a court, guess who's going to be there? You and the judge. Guess who's not going to be there? Your doctor, to substantiate what you said. Make sure you document that. You want to make sure, I'm telling you all these little things, not to be a jerk and not to discount any of the great messages that I've gotten via email and calls, but to let you know, you've got to prove that you are disabled. Not anybody else, not in general, not the masses, but you.